Can you forgive your student loans through bankruptcy now that Trump is on his way to the White House? We are here with the president of Convenient Bankruptcy, Luke Homen. Luke, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. So everyone's asking the same question. 2 years ago, the Biden administration gave the Department of Justice guidance to allow student loans to be discharged, not just forgive. I mean, we're talking forgiven forever, right? Through
Right.
bankruptcy.
And even better, discharge. Discharge is even
Discharge.
better than forgiven.
Thank you. Discharge through bankruptcy. Now that Trump's elected, everyone's asking the question, is it going to continue? What's happening? And you're in the trenches as a bankruptcy trustee. You were talking earlier about your meetings with other trustees around the country. What are you seeing? What's happening right now?
All right. The first thing is we don't know for sure. And I also think that anytime we're talking about bankruptcy change and bankruptcy reform, that's not politically at the top of anybody's agenda, right? So what we're hearing from the Department of Education is that the current law of the land is our current attestation process. And they are going to keep following that until they are ordered not to do so. So the best answer that I can give you is we want to get these filed and going right now. Now, what we don't know is long term, what is President Trump going to think of this process? What we know is that he, back when he was president the first time, had his Secretary of Education studying this problem. And President Trump's committee was studying what do we do about student loans and bankruptcy discharge, and they didn't come to a conclusion. President Biden continued looking at it and then came up with the idea of our bankruptcy attestation, which we're currently using for discharging student loan in bankruptcy.
Now,
But
Rich, one thing, Luke, when you say attestation, you're
yeah,
talking about a student loan form, a form that's filled out
yes,
during the bankruptcy process that gets
yes,
the
and that's what's
loan
so great about it. So here's
discharged.
what's really changed.
Yeah.
It's not that bankruptcy student loan law has really changed, right? The case law, the statutes, none of that changed under the Biden administration. Instead, they came up with a process. So before, the concept was if you want to discharge your student loans in bankruptcy, you file an adversary action and you take it all the way to a trial and you let the judge decide. Well, the problem with that approach is that might cost you $20,000 or $30,000 in attorney fees.
Mm.
So instead, the Department of Education came up with this attestation form. And what's brilliant about it is it creates predictable outcomes. Now we fill out a 60-page form. We put in all the information from your bankruptcy, from your student loans, from your debt repayments, and we have a more objective analysis of whether your student loan should be discharged. And when you have predictability and when you have forms, you can have more likely to succeed outcomes and much lower attorney fees. So it's such a better process. It's not that the law changed, it's that the forms changed. It's that we have a process instead of a trial.
Yeah, that's the key. And it makes it so much easier to get your heads around for debtor attorneys or bankruptcy attorneys to actually process this. Now, with regards to Trump changing the law, there's a couple of things that Biden did. Biden did create this, or the Biden administration gave us this guidance through this attestation form that we're talking about, which is one thing. But they also did executive orders of, hey, this type of student loan is forgiven. Now, those are two different beasts, right?
Right, totally different.
Yeah.
Okay. So forgiveness is more of a political concept. Forgiveness is the idea every American should get a $10,000 haircut off their student loan bill just by virtue of being an American, right? That's politically complicated because you might say it's not fair. I already paid my student loans, or I should get more, I should get less, right? Bankruptcy is person by person specific. You're presenting your finances. You show that you're qualified for a Chapter 7, that you're broke, that you meet all the criteria in your state and your district. And to me, that's not political. To me, that's I qualify for bankruptcy relief. It's not just every American, regardless of how successful they are, gets forgiveness. It's
Yeah.
the people who are broke, who deserve it, can
And,
apply for
and,
a discharge.
and what's interesting about this process, how we has saw it play out over the last couple of years, is one, the forgiveness that you're talking about. That went all to the Supreme Court. I mean, that was like shot down
Right.
many, many, many times, where this was never was
No,
never was
Because
never,
again, I don't think it's political, and we're
yeah.
taking it on a case by case basis. One of the big concepts in Supreme Court law, jurisprudence,
Mhm.
is the idea that things need to be narrowly tailored. Each law needs to be structured as narrow as you can to make the relief fit the problem, right? And that's what bankruptcy individual cases are doing. Every case is individual and unique. And if you're looking at it on a case by case basis, this person's 60-page paperwork looks good, that person doesn't. Now it's as narrow as can be. We're looking at it one by one. It makes the
Yeah.
process a little bit slow, but it makes it right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a key distinction, which is why a lot of our attorneys are saying that this will continue. But the thing is, we don't know, which is why if you have student loans, and is the guideline pretty much that you're seeing pretty much the same, $20,000 in government-based student loans, right?
I think that's best. If it's smaller than that, you can still talk to your attorney, right?
Mhm.
Um, your challenge is you still have to pay for the attorney. That's still going to cost you something. Um, it's not that you have to have 20,000. It's, is it worth your time and effort to pay your attorney to go through the process? More debt certainly makes you a better candidate,
Yeah.
right? In terms of it being worth the bang for your buck. It's the same process whether you have $60 of student loans
Yeah.
or 600,000.
Yeah.
So if you've got a graduate degree worth of student loan debt, it's probably more worthwhile. At the
Without a
same
question.
time, if you have a graduate degree, you may not need a Chapter 7 because hopefully you're earning good money.
For the most part, it surprised me how we're seeing how people with 100,000, 200,000 in dischargeable debt that that in the screening process and the analysis, when you fill out the page, it says, oh yeah, you're qualified for discharge. And I'm like,
Right.
holy nut. I mean, and these are people, they'll never, it's not a income based repayment system. They are going
No,
away forever. The
full
payment is going
discharge.
forever.
Full discharge is what we're
Yeah.
shooting for. Now, sometimes, let me tell you briefly about a case. We filed a case for a guy who had a whole bunch of student loans. He went to school, couldn't use any of it the way his life turned out. Then he most recently went back to school again. So we filed the student loan discharge. We discharged $105,000 for all of his old student loan debt that he was never going to use for his career. His brand new student loan debt that was only about a year old, we didn't discharge that in the bankruptcy. So it
Mm,
was a partial discharge,
it's
but it
great.
was $100,000
And he was thrilled.
and he was thrilled, right? Because now his new degree is going to get him a job. His
Yeah.
old degree didn't. So if you can knock out the debt for the useless degree, you know, and that's part of what frustrates me about student loans, right? You can get student loans for whatever degree you want with no consideration of, am I ever going to be able to repay the student loan back? And you might be only 17 years old when you're applying for this and you're getting stuck with student loans you're going to get saddled with for the rest of your life. As a 17-year-old, I applied to college for majors that I had no business
Yeah.
applying, right? Like I
No,
didn't
I mean, I
know.
think that's totally
Um,
fair, which is why the attestation and the discharge through bankruptcy makes it so fair, right?
right.
Now, one of the things I've noticed, and I want to address this for people listening, a lot of people, the biggest hurdle that we hear is like, no, this can't be real.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. You probably hear with your clients. No, I thought bankruptcy or student loans were like taxes, like they're for life, right? And
Right.
that's what we were
Well,
taught.
well, first off, so taxes can be discharged in bankruptcy.
Oh,
That's
well,
another lie,
okay.
right? Can be done. But so first is there are press releases. Maybe you could pop this into your video from the government showing that this is real. Also, I have case numbers that I can give you where we've actually done this for real people and gotten real results.
Yeah.
So not only can it be done, we've done it.
Well, let's wrap this video up and talk about the process, like not the full the process. We're going to do
Yeah.
that, the student loan process in the next video. But let's talk about if someone's interested, you can go down to the link below. You can fill out a free form. We do a free analysis, right?
Yeah.
Or if you qualify, right? And then we're gonna take the information, send over to you, Luke, send over to one of our other attorneys that does this, only those that specialize in student loans.
Right.
Then what does this process look like once they get to you?
Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have an initial phone screener to see if this is a good fit, right? We're going to run through your case. And then we're going to have an attorney from my office look at it with you and evaluate, does this make sense? And then talk to you about the cost. I believe in fully transparent pricing. We quote you an upfront fee that includes all the costs and fees and everything, and it's just an out the door price, right? Because I want to make sure that you're comfortable with what you're getting, right? And
course.
then if we think you're a good candidate, if you're comfortable with the price, then we start filing the court paperwork. And then
And what
then we go
about
through the
payment plans?
attestation process together.
I know a lot of people don't have the money to pay them full. You have
Yeah,
payment plans
we don't
available.
do that. So the reality is, if you had a big pile of money to pay for a bankruptcy attorney to do this, you're probably not a good candidate
Yeah.
for student loan relief, right? So what we do with every single client is we put them on a monthly recurring payment plan. We try and get the fees knocked out in about 3 years. It'll be something affordable. It's case by case basis because every case is different, right? But we come up with something that's affordable, and then we'll come up with a small amount that once we have this amount, we call it the retainer, then we file the paperwork. So we don't need to be paid in full to file the case, but we need your commitment that you're going to pay this. And 3 years of small payments is going to be a small fraction of what it would cost you to be paying this, to a student loan company.
Perfect. Well, if those of you that are interested in getting a free analysis, link right below. You could go to the link, fill out your information. Someone will call you and we'll do a initial screening, as Luke said. Then you'll meet with someone, an attorney that's going to go through your case. There are no fees paid for this initial process, none at all, zero. The reason why we do that is because we want to make sure we can fulfill on the concept of student loan discharge.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Check out part 2 of our series on student loan discharges, where we guide you step by step through the student loan discharge process. And subscribe to Evergreen Financial Counseling, your path to financial recovery.